Hi, I'm Admiral, and in this video, I'll be revisiting Pokémon Black. If you're a regular on the channel, or one of the 142 people, at the time of recording anyway, who have seen my playthrough of Pokémon Black with just Hydreigon, you'll know that, to put it gently, I didn't quite care for the game. However, the same day I uploaded that video back in November of 2022, I got to thinking about it and didn't feel like I'd been very fair to Pokémon Black. Let me explain. Between the relative success of the prior two videos, where I played Platinum with just Garchomp and Emerald with Metagross and Salamence, and my own desire to put out videos at a constant pace, I put a bit too much pressure on myself to breeze through the game. That ended up leaving me frustrated by all of the rival fights and Team Plasma shenanigans every 5 minutes, by Hydreigon's underperformance, and by the overall length of the game. And don't get me wrong, I stand by a lot of the criticisms that I made back then, but I still want to give this game another crack to see if I was too harsh on it, especially since Gen 5 is so widely loved among Pokemon players. Simply put, I want to come back with a clearer mind and see if I was wrong. So sit back, relax, and enjoy me heading through Unova once more to see if it's actually better than I initially thought. Stick around to the end of the video too, where I'll talk a bit more about the game and we'll see if my opinion has changed at all, alongside a rather sad update on the pseudo-legendary series as a whole. And as a side note, the original video isn't required viewing by any means, but if you're interested in watching it first, I'll put a link to it on your screen right now. And finally, before we start, I want to change things up a bit and ask you to consider subscribing to the channel. I normally save this for the end of the video, but now that I have a pretty diverse set of analytics, I've noticed that people tend not to stick around to that point, which is fine, but it just means I'm going to ask here instead. Luckily, I don't have anything else to say for now, so let's get into the run. The first thing I do is claim my starter, a Tepig. Not only is it generally best practice and my own personal tradition to take the Fire starter, Tepig is also the only Generation 5 starter that gets a dual type at the end of its evolution, so Emboar is just kind of better than Superior and Samurott. After that, I have my first two rival battles against Cheren and Bianca. I learned later that Tepig has a hasty nature, so the battles end up being pretty close, especially Bianca's, which we win with just 1 HP, but we prevail. Next, we link up with Professor Juniper, who charges us with our quest. We're going to complete the Pokédex, or at least as much as I can without trading. To aid us on that, Juniper teaches us how to catch Pokémon. I follow her directions and catch a Patrat and a Lillipup. They both have an adamant nature, which is pretty great, and their abilities aren't bad either. These two will be good to have in the back for the early game until I can get some encounters I actually intend to use. I arrive in Accumula Town, and after learning about Pokemon Centers, listen to Ghetsis talk about liberating Pokemon. Ghetsis is fun because he's so comically evil looking that it's impossible for him to not be the bad guy. Anyway, he leaves and N remains, so I have to battle him. His Purloin isn't too scary, so don't have much trouble and can mosey on down to Striaton and the first gym. The first gym always puts the player at a tight disadvantage, so I train up a bit first and then get into it. The battle against Crest sees me lead Tepig into his Lillipup. I immediately go for Ember, looking for a burn, as Crest uses a workup. The next turn sees Tepig take Lillipup low off another Ember, as we get hit decently hard by a bite. Crest heals on the next turn, so we just hit another Ember and take it to a Sliver after. A bite from Lillipup takes us to the yellow and triggers a held Oranberry. Thanks to Pickup, Lillipup also gets an Oranberry, which it immediately uses. Despite its refusal to make this easy for me, our next Ember takes it down. We stay in as Panpour comes out, and hit it with a Tail Whip as it goes for workup. We hit it with a Tackle on the next turn, doing about a quarter of its HP as it uses a second workup. The third turn sees it finally attack, bringing an end to poor Tepig. I bring in Lillipup next, who takes a nasty Water Gun before retaliating with a hard Tackle. A held Oranberry means that we can take another hit and swing back to end the battle. After the gym, I'm abducted by Fennel, who asks me to go to the Dream Yard and find a Munna to help her research. Bianca joins me and we witness Team Plasma kicking the crap out of the poor creature, before Musharna swoops in and scares them off using an illusion of Ghetsis. Before I leave, I catch an Audino and a Munna of my own. Fennel forces me to hear about features I'm not going to use, and then I skip town to find the next gym. On my way, I have another battle with Cheren. He isn't any harder than he was before the first gym, which I didn't show because it was easy, so you can imagine my disappointment at the lack of a challenge. He still hasn't even caught a third Pokemon. After beating him up, Bianca rushes in to inform us that Team Plasma has stolen a little girl's Pokemon, so Cheren and I decide to be heroes and help her out. And to Cheren's credit, he grows a remarkable amount in 5 minutes, because during our battle against Team Plasma, he and Oshawott do incredible work. Normally I'd skip a battle like this, but once I saw that critical Water Gun off the rip, I knew it was going in the video. Nice work, guys. After that, I head towards Nacrene for the next gym. On my way, I get Tepig to evolve into Pig Knight. I also catch a Blitzel, who will replace Audino before the next gym. Its Lightning Rod ability might let me bait my new Pidove down the line for a free boost, but I'll have to try that when I face an Electric Trainer. I make it to Nakreen without further issue, but decide that I want to let a few other members of the team catch up to Pig Knight before the gym, so I'll do some quick grinding. Now it's time for Lenora. She leads with the Herdier, and I send out Mana. I have Mana go for Yawn, but Herdier outspeeds to one-shot with Bite. That's fine though, since Mana just needed to eat the Intimidate. I send out Pig Knight next, who opens with a Workup. I want to set up 2 Workups, but Herdier's takedown does solid damage, so I can't risk another hit. I go for Arm Thrust, which thankfully gets a roll for 3 hits to take Herdier down. Next is Watchog, who misses a Hypnosis before we roll a 4-hit Arm Thrust to one-shot, I think, and win the battle. While I ponder whether or not multi-hit moves can technically one-shot, Team Plasma intends to steal the Dragonite fossil from the museum, because I guess posthumous liberation still counts as liberation. Besides, after seeing what Lance's Dragonite does, I would also not want to risk stealing someone's Dragonite if it can still resist. We chase them into the forest, where I retrieve the head with no issue. I also catch a Cottony, but I don't think I'll use it. After that, I head right for Castelia. Every time I think I could live in a big city from now on, I'll need to remember how horrifying it is to navigate this place, because it's giving me anxiety and I'm not even really there. Anyway, I don't bother starting the Team Plasma stuff here. Yes, I know we literally just finished Team Plasma stuff, but instead I go north through the desert, where I catch a Sandile with Moxie who immediately joins the team. Once I've acquired the little lizard, I go ahead and visit the gym to start more Team Plasma stuff. This time, they've burgled one of Bianca's balls, so it's up to me, Berg, and Iris to sort things out and return her mana. Between this little detour and the gym trainers, Pig Knight is more than ready to sweep Berg's team, so that's our next stop. Berg leads with Whirlipede, and I send out Pig Knight. A held Petraberry means that we're relatively safe to set up, so that's exactly what I start doing with Workup before taking a Poison Tail. A Screech from Whirlipede on the next turn means that we're at risk to a crit, but I play greedy and set my 3rd Workup. Pig Knight takes a non-critical hit pretty well, so I finally go in with a Flame Charge, one-shotting. I did all of that setup to make sure that Berg's second Pokemon, a Dwebble, would also be a one-shot with Flame Charge, and it works. That just leaves his Leavanny. It knows Protect, but the AI loves speed control, so I think it'll go for String Shot instead. I'm probably right, but we'll never know for sure, because we outspeed and one-shot one last time to win an easy badge. Winning that battle opens up the next stretch of map, which means I can venture further into the desert to catch a Sigilyph, who will replace Mana on the squad as our primary special attacker. I also take some time to train up the rest of the crew, since Pig Knight's kind of run away with our levels so far. But before I can do any of that, I have to deal with Bianca, whose team isn't too difficult. It helps that she calls to schedule the battle beforehand, so I was at least expecting this fight. What I wasn't expecting was having to fight Charon immediately after. Even worse, he's camping the gate, so I still haven't gotten a chance to level up the team. This fight ends up being pretty sketchy at first, but I'm able to recover pretty quickly and deal with it. Even in disadvantage like this, the fight ends up being nothing more than an inconvenient detour on my way north. With that, I complete my journey to Nimbasa before making like a bug type and hitting a U-turn right back south so I can finally start training. I mainly want Sandile to level up here, since the next gym is an electric type challenge against Elisa, and prepping for her is the main goal for the session. Eventually, I decided it'll be more efficient to level by fighting the electric gym's trainers, so I head back to town and go east. There, N takes me on a Ferris wheel. It's an intimate scene, where he tells me that he's the leader of Team Plasma and reaffirms his decision to free Pokemon from the burden of mankind. After that, I battle him. The only mildly interesting thing here is Blitzel hitting the weakest quick attack in recorded history, but after that, I get a screen straight out of a dating sim and the freedom to enter the gym, clear out the trainers, and battle the leader. Elisa leads with her first Emolga, and I lead with Pig Knight. I have Pig Knight fire away with a Flame Charge after Emolga hits a weak pursuit, giving us the speed advantage. I have Pig Knight hit it again, and it's left with a Sliver before hitting a much harder than pursuit Aerial Ace. A third Flame Charge takes it low after Elisa heals, and I go for Takedown. We miss, letting Emolga finish off Pig Knight. Luckily, I only needed it to do enough damage for Sandile to finish it with a Crunch, so we do after taking a nasty Aerial Ace. We get a free Moxie boost and Paralyzed from Static. A lack of Berry Trees means that there's no Cherry Berry for Sandile to hold, and so the paralysis sticks as Elisa's second Emolga comes out. We go for Crunch, going down to 10 HP off of another Aerial Ace first. A held Oranberry brings us up, and Crunch crits, taking Emolga down in one hit. Last is Elisa's Zebstrika, and I decide to heal Sandile real quick. Zebstrika hits a decently hard quick attack as we heal, and then outspeeds to hit a hard flame charge. We respond with the first turn of Dig, and at +2 attack, this is a guaranteed one-shot when we come up. Zebstrika misses a quick attack, we hit Dig, and we win. The two Emolga made that battle pretty rough. I wish they'd been a bit more creative with Elisa's team instead of just two of the exact same Pokemon down to the moveset, but whatever. That battle also gets us a Krokorok, and now I have to go back to grinding the rest of the team. First, I confirm that Charon is, in fact, waiting for me outside of the city because he doesn't have anything better to do, and decide to see if I can go east for better levels. Sure enough, I can leave the city that way unmolested, and begin grinding. Once everyone's at a suitable level, I go west, young man, and face Charon. He leads with Liepard, and I send out Pignite. I have Pignite go for workup, but Liepard hits a fake out, so we don't do anything. On the second turn, we're able to set up with workup after Liepard just goes for Torment. After that, Liepard hits a resisted pursuit before we take it down with Arm Thrust. Charon makes the sensible decision to bring in Duat, so I send out Blitzel. Fun fact, Blitzel was so god-awful during training that I had to go back to Castelia to get the experience share just so I could level it up. Anywho, we outspeed to nail Duat with Spark, leaving it just under half health. That triggers Duat's Citrus Berry, healing it as we take a nasty Razor Shell in return. Our next Spark leaves Duat with a Sliver and paralyzes before we go down to a Water Pulse, but this is actually fine. It's left Krokorok in a perfect position to finish it with Crunch, essentially a free Moxie boost. Pansear comes out next, so I have Krokorok use Dig. After we dodge a Flame Burst, Krokorok one-shots for another Moxie boost. Tranquil is last, but can't survive with +2 Crunch, going down as we win the battle. After that, it's off to Driftvale, home of the best music in the game. Team Plasma is running amok here, but managed to escape as Clay led us into the city. He decides that because he can't do two things at once, it's somehow our fault that he lost Team Plasma, forcing me and Charon to do his job for him. Luckily, it's not too difficult to track them down, so now it's off to Clay's gym. I lead Pignite into his Krokorok, and my intention is to set up a sweep using Workup. Unfortunately, Krokorok nails Pignite with Bulldoze on the first turn, so I immediately abandon that plan and go for the far safer plan B. That starts with taking Krokorok down with Arm Thrust. Thanks to Bulldoze knocking our speed down, Pignite is at risk, but thankfully Krokorok just uses Torment, so we're safe to finish it off. Clay sends out Palpitoad next, so I bring in Sigilyph. On the first turn, I set up a Tailwind, and Palpitoad just misses a Muddy Water. Sigilyph brings it to exactly half with a Psybeam on the next turn, and Palpitoad uses Aqua Rune, healing it so we don't get the 2-shot. At least, that's what I think, but we high roll on the next turn to finish it off anyway. Clay's down to his last Pokemon now, an Excadrill. I send out Pignite, hoping to one-shot with Flame Charge. Of course, that was never really going to happen without a crit, so we go down after bringing Excadrill into the yellow. That means that Krokorok can come in and use Dig after taking a Slash. Excadrill misses a second Slash while we're underground, and then our Krokorok finishes the battle and wins the badge. After that, Bianca challenges me on my way out of the city. Luckily, I'm expecting it, since this game has a pretty predictable pattern, so it shouldn't be too hard. She leads with Herdier, and I send out Pignite. I use Workup turn 1 to offset Intimidate, and Herdier does the same thing, minus the Intimidate. On the next turn, one set of Arm Thrusts takes the dog down, so Bianca brings in her Panpour. I keep Pignite in, and miss a takedown. Luckily, Panpour just uses Taunt, so a follow-up takedown connects to one-shot. Musharna comes out third, and I get really greedy because I want Emboar. I stay in with Pignite and learn that Musharna is apparently quite bulky, as a takedown does less than half of its health and leaves us vulnerable to a critical Psybeam, which is more than enough to take Pignite down. I bring in Krokorok, who's able to finish Musharna off with the Crunch. Last out is Bianca's Servine, who outspeeds to hit a Leech Seed before Crunch one-shots to finish the battle. From there, I head to Chargestone Cavern, where I run into Team Plasma yet again. The Shadow Triad make the egregious claim that they brought me to N, even though I was already there by the time they got to me. Anyway, N claims I'm special, which we already knew, and then disappears into the cave's deeper recesses. I begin hunting for the next member of the team, but before I find it, Pignite evolves into Emboar, giving us a boost to our overall power. After a bit of work, I find it, adding a Ferroseed to the box. Once I make it to the next town, he'll get a Rocky Helmet. That, combined with his ability, Iron Barbs, will heavily punish any Pokemon that tries making contact with him. Before that can happen, I have to make my way through the rest of Chargestone, and end up facing off against N. Let's see what I did there. Emboar has a 10 level advantage on his team, so this won't be too hard. N leads with Boldore, and Emboar takes it down with 3 hits from Arm Thrust before it can act. Next out for N is Joltik, who Emboar outspeeds to one-shot with Flame Charge. Third is Clink, who also gets one-shot by Flame Charge. Last up is Ferroseed, but with a 4x weakness to fire, one last Flame Charge is all we need to finish the sweep. Professor Milf and Bianca try to change N's mind about Pokemon, but he doesn't care about their opinions and leaves. That means we're good to enter Mistralton, which means it's time for Skyla, which means that I have to finally commit to training Blitzel up some more, which sucks. Luckily, the lucky egg that I got from Juniper and the fact that we're a level away from evolving makes this a bit better. And so, after some dedicated grinding, Blitzel evolves, and at level 32, I go to the Celestial Tower so Skyla will go back to the gym, letting me clear out the gym's trainers and start the battle. I sent out Zebstrika to face off against Skyla's first Pokemon, a Swoobat. We outspeed and one-shot with Spark, so Skyla brings out her second team member. Unfezant actually survives the Spark, but ends up getting paralyzed. And is fully paralyzed, so we'll never know what move it was going to use. Skyla heals it a few times, but the outcome of this battle was never really in doubt. The bald bird falls, and so Skyla is down to her ace, Swanna. However, its quad weakness to electric moves makes this her least threatening team member, as the final Spark completes Zebstrika's domination of this gym. A new badge means another set of battles against Charon and Bianca, so I get ready to run the gauntlet once more. Sure enough, Charon again proves that stalking me is the only thing he has going on in his life, as he's waiting for me outside of Twist Mountain. However, we have a much stronger level advantage this time, so it should be pretty easy. Charon leads with his Unfezant, and I send out Zebstrika. Just like our battle with Skyla, Spark leaves Unfezant deep in the red and paralyzed, but this time it's able to attack. It just uses Taunt, so another Spark takes it out. Charon sends out Simisear next, so I switch over to Krokorok. Simisear uses Leer before taking a Bulldoze. Thanks to Bulldoze, we now outspeed, so a follow-up finishes it off. Duat comes out third, so it's back over to Zebstrika. As Spark leaves Duat deep in the red, I begin to notice a pattern, and Duat, now in Torrent range, fires back with a nasty Water Pulse. A priority Aqua Jet on the next turn takes Zebstrika down, so I bring in Ferroseed. I expect a physical move that will let Iron Barbs kill Duat, but instead it fires off a Water Pulse that crits and confuses, so it's no longer safe to stay in. I pivot over to Sigilyph, who's able to tank an Aqua Jet and finish Duat off with a Side Beam. Last is Liepard, so I bring in Emboar. A soft Fake Out means that the first turn is pretty pointless, but on the next turn we both set up, with Liepard using Hone Claws and Emboar using Workup. Charon plays greedy and uses another Hone Claws, letting Emboar finish it off with Arm Thrust, winning the fight. After that, I do some fairly straightforward travel on my way through Twist Mountain and arrive in Osiris. This means that we can finally get a better fighting move on Emboar in the form of Brick Break, which should make the Ice Gym here pretty trivial, but there's only one way to find out. First up for Bryson is Vanillish. On turn 1, Emboar sets up Workup, and Vanillish uses Acid Armor to buff its defense. I'm a bit worried because I forgot this thing had a way to set up, but Emboar crits a Brick Break on the next turn, so we one-shot anyway. Next out for Bryson is Partic, but Brick Break one-shots, so last up is his Cryogonal. However, a base of 30 defense means that after it hits the world's weakest Aurora Beam, Brick Break one-shots it and probably every other Cryogonal in a 5-mile radius to win the badge. After that, it's just some more basic story stuff. N awakens a sleeping legendary to rule the world, we have to find its counterpart to stop Team Plasma, that sort of thing. I snag a Druddigon here, but it's not to add it to our team. This is one of the most convenient encounters we can get to learn Surf, since apparently fishing is locked behind the postgame in this generation, which I think has to be one of the weirdest decisions that any Pokemon game has ever made. Anyway, that lets us run back to Route 6, where I catch an Axew. Haxorus is just so much better than Druddigon, and most other available Pokemon for that matter, that I think it'd be really silly of me not to try to get it. I then make my way through the rest of the map, picking up the TMs for Aerial Ace and Return on my path, so I can return to the desert between Nimbasa and Castelia. There, the Relic Castle awaits, and Reshiram should be there too, but instead, we only find Team Plasma. Ferroseed evolves while I clear them out, but I then find myself unceremoniously summoned to Necrene's museum, so that's her next stop. There, I'm given a rock that contains Reshiram, and am told to go to Opelucid, home of the final gym and 2 dragon specialists. On the way there, we have the final Bianca fight of the run. I'm not ready for this though, since I thought it happened on the bridge itself and not before. Luckily, it's not too difficult. Her Stoutland is able to set up and takes out Sigilyph and Krokorok, and her Musharna kept putting Ferrothorn to sleep because apparently it has 100% accurate hypnosis, but otherwise it's not much of a challenge. It just ends up being inconvenient, but that's about 90% of the rival battles in this game anyway. With that, I go ahead and enter Opelucid proper, but I'm not quite ready for the gym. On the one hand, Drayden's team caps out at level 43, which isn't too bad. On the other hand, he's a dirty cheater, because his level 43 Pokemon is a Haxorus, which can normally only evolve from Fracture at level 48. It's a Pokemon with stats nearing a Super Legendary, so I need to take some time to make sure that I can handle this thing. I get the whole team up to level 43 to match Drayden's Haxorus, which means that Krokorok evolves into Crocodile and Axew evolves into Fracture. I get Sigilyph up to level 44 so it can learn Psychic, and from there we're ready to go. A held lucky egg means that by the time we clear out all the gym trainers, Fracture is actually at level 46. That just means that the sweep will be even easier than I'd initially planned. On the first turn, Drayden leads with his Fracture as I send out mine. We both open with Dragon Dance, and then my Fracture one-shots with a Dragon Claw. Drayden's Druddigon is second, and also goes down to one Dragon Claw. Rough Skin hurts us a bit, but we still outspeed his Haxorus to one-shot his final Pokemon, completing an admittedly anticlimactic final gym battle. Now all that's left is one last battle with Cheren before Victory Road, the Elite Four, and wrapping up the Team Plasma stuff. The first thing on that list ambushes me on Route 10, so I have to put the hurt on Cheren's team one last time. As a side note, this is the 7th battle with him in the game. That's more than some games have for all of their rivals combined. However, before any of that happens, a gate clerk informs me of a storm on Route 7. Even though I want to keep moving on, I don't remember this happening in the Hydreigon playthrough, so my curiosity gets the better of me and I go to investigate. It turns out to be Tornadus, who will now roam the Unova region. If I find it, I'll make sure to catch it, but it's so late in the run that I don't see it happening. That means it's time for Cheren. He leads with Unpheasant, and I send out Zebstrika. On the first turn, Unpheasant uses Detect, so our Spark doesn't hit. Our next attempt connects, taking Unpheasant into yellow health. It just uses Razor Wind, so on the next turn we outspeed to finish it off. Samurott comes out next, but with its typing and ability to punish moves and make contact with it, Ferrothorn should be more than capable of taking a few hits and... oh, never mind. Cheren just went for Encore for some reason, so we go ahead and one-shot with Power Whip. Cool. Third out is Simisear, so I send in Crocodile. Simisear outspeeds, but just goes for Leer. That means that we can dodge a second Leer while underground and one-shot with Dig. Last up is Liepard, so Emboar comes out to one-shot with Brick Break, winning the final Cheren fight. After that, it's just a quick trek through Victory Road, and we're at the Pokemon League. I always manage to get parts of this group confused with Kalos' Elite Four, so I'll need to do a bit of research to make sure I know in which order I want to challenge them. Once I've done that, I'll grind up the team to level 54 so Crocodile can have Earthquake, and then we should be good to go. Here are our stats and moves before the end of the game. While I'm not too torn up about our stats, I'm a bit less than enthused about the quality of our moves. For example, I'd usually have Earthquake on Emboar and Haxorus too, as they're great physical attackers, but that TM is locked behind the postgame. I'd also want Home Claws on Crocodile, but that's also unobtainable right now. Actually, there's a lot in this game that's unavailable until you finish the story. Luckily, we shouldn't need any of the post-game content in order to wreck shop, so let's get started. First up is Caitlyn and her Psychic-type Pokemon. I lead with Crocodile and she sends out Reuniclus. We outspeed to one-shot with Crunch, getting us a Moxie boost. She sends out Sigilyph next, but it's just another one-shot from Crunch. Third is Musharna, who also goes down to a single Crunch. Last out is Gothitelle, but we're at +3 attack now, so the battle was really over 2 turns ago. One more Crunch secures our first win. Next up is Chantal, whose ghost types can be a bit tricky. I lead Crocodile again, and she sends out a Cofagrigus. I go for Earthquake to avoid losing Moxie, and Cofagrigus lives and hits a Will-O-Wisp. Birds have the attack stat of the burned Pokemon, so our next Earthquake doesn't finish it off. With a bit of work and healing, I'm able to finish it without being burned or losing my ability to Mummy, so we get the Moxie boost as Jellicent comes in. We one-shot with Crunch, but Cursed Body triggers, disabling the move. That's exactly why I taught Crocodile Shadow Claw though, so Golurker's a one-shot anyway. Chandelure is last out, but can't survive a Shadow Claw, so Crocodile's done kicking ass for the moment, and we can move on. I challenge Grimsley next, and lead Emboar into his Dark types. We outspeed Scrafty and one-shot with Brick Break, so Grimsley sends out his Crocodile. Intimidate lowers our attack, so I go for Work Up to even things back out. Unexpectedly, Crocodile outspeeds and ends up one-shotting Emboar with Earthquake before we get to do anything. I bring in Haxorus next and set up a Swords Dance. Crocodile responds with a nasty Dragon Claw that brings Haxorus down to about half health, but we're able to follow it up on the next turn with a Dragon Claw that one-shots. Third out is Bisharp, who takes a resisted Dragon Claw to about a quarter of its HP. It responds with a Night Slash that does pretty solid damage, and then Grimsley just keeps healing while we try to finish it off. Eventually, he runs out of full restores, so we take Bisharp down. Last is Liepard, who outspeeds and finishes Haxorus off with a Night Slash. I bring in Ferrothor next and go for Ironhead. Unfortunately, Liepard uses Attract, so we don't end up getting to attack. I hard switch to Crocodile, taking an Aerial Ace on the switch. Liepard outspeeds to hit another Aerial Ace, but Earthquake one-shots after, winning a surprisingly hard third battle. Last is Marshall, whose name I'm now realizing is a pun on martial as in martial arts. Consequently, he'll be using fighting types. On paper, Sigilyph should just sweep him, but all of his Pokemon have a Rock-type move, so this could end up being really bad. He leads with Throw, and I send out Sigilyph. Psychic barely misses out on a one-shot, so we wind up taking a nasty Stone Edge in return. Marshall keeps healing, but we eventually get a high roll that one-shots Throw. Sawk is out next, and Psychic doesn't one-shot because of Sturdy. That lets Sawk hit another 80% accurate Stone Edge to finish off poor Sigilyph. Luckily, I'd planned for this, sending out Haxorus to finish it with Aerial Ace. Conkeldurr is third out, so I have Haxorus set up a Swords Dance. Conkeldurr responds with a hard Hammer Arm, but we one-shot on the next turn with Aerial Ace. Last out is Mienshao, who we outspeed to one-shot with a final Aerial Ace. Now it's time for the champion. Or it would be if Team Plasma didn't have a massive underground castle that they somehow managed to hide over several years of construction and are now bringing to the surface in a final run for power. So, I run inside, the gym leaders show up to stop the sages from jumping me, and then it's time for N. N and I chat for a minute before Reshiram decides that I'm pretty cool, actually, and it wants to join my team. I catch it, and then it becomes my lead into N Zekrom. Zekrom outspeeds to hit a Fusion Bolt, and we respond with a Dragon Breath, leaving us both in similar positions, at least in terms of health. On the next turn, Zekrom hits a Giga Impact to leave Reshiram with just 5 HP, letting us finish it off with another Dragon Breath. Next out for N is his Caracosta, so I bring in Ferrothorn. It survives a Power Whip thanks to Sturdy after hitting a Stone Edge, so we nail it with an Iron Head after N heals. Breaking Sturdy should let us finish it with Power Whip, but we miss. That means we have to take another Stone Edge before finally finishing it off. N sends in Klinklang next, so I bring in Crocodile. Surprisingly, it outspeeds, and even more surprisingly, it knows Focus Blast. My surprise compounds as Earthquake only does neutral damage, but it one-shots anyway to reveal a Zoroark. Next up is Vanillux, but we outspeed to one-shot with a Crunch. After that is the real Klinklang, who is very dead after a super effective Moxie-boosted Earthquake. Last is Archeops, who hits a nasty Acrobatics before going down to a Crunch, completing the battle. After that, Ghetsis pops in to do a little villain monologue, and then we battle. He actually reverse sweeps me with Hydreigon on my first go, since it didn't miss any of several Focus Blasts or Fire Blasts, but that's fine, since I can lead with the Pokemon I want to lead with this time. I send out Crocodile into his Cofagrigus, leaving it in the red off a Crunch. That gives us Mummy as it misses a Toxic, which doesn't really bother me since Crocodile isn't great into the rest of his team. A Shadow Claw takes Cofagrigus back into the red as Ghetsis heals, and then we finish it with another hit. Hydreigon comes in, so I sent out Zebstrika. It's the only member of our team to outspeed, so I have it hit a Thunder Wave. After that, I just go for Wild Charge and Discharge to get some chip damage in so I can safely bring in another Pokemon. I bring in Emboar, who can come in and finish Hydreigon with a Brick Break thanks to Zebstrika's sacrifice. Bouffalant is third, but we outspeed and one-shot with Brick Break. Seismitoad is next, so I bring in Ferrothorn, who nails it with Power Whip after it just sets up a Rain Dance. Electros is fifth out, and hits Ferrothorn hard with Flamethrower. A retaliatory Iron Head does pretty pathetic damage, so I bring in Reshiram to take a second Flamethrower. I have it go for Dragon Breath on the next turn, paralyzing Electros before we get hit by Crunch. I go for Fusion Flare to finish it off, but I forgot about the rain, so it doesn't kill. A Dragon Breath on the next turn does, so it's one final switch to Emboar on Bisharp to hit a quad-effective Brick Break to finish the game. With that, the whole thing's done, so I can talk about the game and decide, once and for all, whether or not I like it. And the answer is... pause for dramatic effect. Yeah, it's good. It's long as hell, but past that, it's a pretty fun one. I still stand by some of my criticisms, though, starting with my belief that the Team Plasma stuff is just not great. Every town has some Team Plasma crisis going on, but it's always something small, and I don't think that's the way to handle it. I'd have preferred that they cut a lot of the filler Team Plasma stuff to give us a chance to actually take some initiative. One of my biggest issues with the story of this game is that everything just happens to the player, instead of things happening as a result of the player's actions. For example, my biggest gripe is the plot twist of Ghetsis being evil. It would have been really cool if instead of random crises 5 through 9, we got to take some time to investigate Team Plasma, beginning to unearth the truth of what they're doing and maybe even uncovering the existence of their castle. We don't have all of the pieces, but we know enough to have an idea of what happens later on. Instead, all of Ghetsis' dialogue features him saying something to the effect of, "My goals, I mean Team Plasma's goals, at least once." Not the best foreshadowing, I gotta say. I get that it's a kid's game, but I also think that kids should be respected as an audience. They're smart enough to pick up on this stuff without it being so blatant, and they deserve quality writing. I also stand by the criticism that this game has way too many rival battles, especially considering the fact that Cheren and Bianca's teams don't change for the entire game, outside of their Pokemon evolving. Once they get their 4 Pokemon, that's what you're going to be dealing with for the entire playthrough. It gets tedious so quickly. Between just those two, there are 12 rival battles. That's insane, and I feel like I need to emphasize that we're not counting N. That's the same quantity as all of the gyms and the Elite Four as rival battles. I feel like most of this video was just rival fights, and I skipped a few. But with all of that said, I'm still so glad I came back to this one. I actually really enjoyed myself this time around, and I'm excited to eventually visit the sequels, since those are supposed to be the pinnacle of Pokemon, or something. While I'm disappointed by how much is locked behind the postgame, that also incentivizes me to come back to this at some point and explore Unova some more. I don't see myself doing that for a while though, since this game is so long. This took me 22 hours of playtime to finish, so I really don't see myself coming back anytime soon. However, I've decided that I definitely want to go back and revisit the other games that I played for the first time during the Pseudo Legendary series, so you can look forward to that. Speaking of that series, as promised, here's the update, and I've got a bit of bad news. As far as I can tell, the only way I can mod the Switch games to let me start with the Dragapult is to mod my console itself, and I'm not doing that. I only have one Switch, and I'm not going to risk ruining it by messing something up, which I would absolutely do. I can't exactly afford to replace it or to buy a burner Switch, so that series is going to have to be done for now. On the plus side, since people haven't quite gotten a handle on modding Scarlet and Violet yet, it was going to have to be put on hold for a while anyway. Now, all that's left for me to do is sign off. The next video is going to be a bit of a departure from the usual, as it won't be focused on gameplay. The nice thing is that I won't have to play an entire game, so I might actually upload 2 videos within the span of a month, which I don't think I've ever done on this channel. I'm really excited to make it, and I hope you'll all like it. After that, it'll be back to normal with a return to Heart Gold for a normal experience. If you happen to enjoy this video, make sure to leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and drop a comment. Your feedback will help me improve and can give me an idea of what you want to see going forward, so commenting is really the most important thing you can do. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.